Hello and all, welcome to the Galaxy Man Show. For my very first guest of this week is this incredible singer known by the name of fJordie. So I'm about to add fJordie into the live now and have a chat with fJordie about her sensational music. So yeah, let's add fJordie in and have a chat with fJordie. So welcome fJordie. It's such an incredible pleasure having you on the show for today. To people that don't know who you are, if you give like a bit of backstory about yourself and then we'll dive right into the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So my name's fJordie. I am from Brisbane in Australia, and I was a teacher. I am a teacher still, but I have been a musician for as long as I can remember, singing since I was a little kid. And now I have written some music, released it, and I play gigs around Brisbane. So that's what I do. I'm a teacher. I'm a musician. It's me.
Awesome. So I'll dive right into the questions now, fJordie. So for my very first question, you've created a lot of incredible like original songs that you've like performed and made at gigs and stuff. And for the very first original song I'm going to mention is Would I Do It Again? Like, what was it like creating this one and what's the meaning behind this song?
Yeah, absolutely. So would I do it again? I actually started writing that song. I was sitting in my classroom one day, tinkering on this piano that we had, and it was actually it was an out of tune piano, which a lot of people hate out of tune pianos, but I don't mind them. Gives them character. And I just started tinkering with a song that I used to play when I was a teenager, and I modulated it, moved it into different keys, and changed how I was playing it. And I kind of came across the piano progression which you hear in Would I Do It Again? And I just started mucking around with melodies and lyrics, and I came up with the idea of, if I could change my life, or if I could go back in time and, make the decisions that I've made again, would I make the same decision? Which is essentially it. And so I thought, well, what's a big decision that I made? And how did it impact me? So a big decision that I made was um, a boy when I was in high school, very high school, said that he liked me, and I turned him down because he was my best friend. And so I thought I'd tell the story around that, and then really ruminate on, if I could make that decision again, would I make the same one, and would it be right or wrong? Because you never really know. You never really know what decision will take you where. And so at the end of the chorus it says, if I could take it back, would I do it again? Would I do it wrong? And it doesn't really, there's no real implication as to whether either of the decisions is the wrong decision. It just says, would I do it wrong?
Awesome. So on to my very next question. So for the next original song I'm going to mention is Think It's Time to Move On. What was it like creating this one, and what's the meaning behind this song?
This one's really fun, and it almost didn't make the album, but I'm glad it did, because everyone that I've talked to, or most people that I've talked to, this is their favorite song from the album. So I'm glad it did make the album. The way that I made it is quite a funny story, actually. We had some people over, and it was a gardening day. And I had done some gardening in the morning, and then I was just I was a little bit over it. So I said that I needed to do some work. I just locked myself in my studio, and I wrote that song in that day. And it was the same thing. I made a small loop. I wasn't intending to write a song. I just wrote a loop just to see what would happen. And Time to Move On came out of it. And so the idea around that song, because Viridian, the album Viridian is all about a toxic relationship and moving on from that toxic relationship, reflecting on it. So Time to Move On is really about that turning point of when you realize, like, oh, this is actually terrible for me. It's time to move on. And so it describes a few moments, or it's really ethereal. And so it's very metaphorical in the way that I think I go about talking about that moment to move on. I realized I was on the dark side. I was in the half light on the dark side of the moon, and I realized, I was just thinking about you. Like, I was in this awesome ass place, but all I could do was just think about this one person, and it was just toxic and too much. So, time to move on. Yeah, that's where that song came from. Bit of fun, but I'm glad I made the album.
That's
It's probably the best one on there.
Awesome. So on to our very next question. So with the next song I'm going to mention is Better Off Alone. Like, what was it like creating this one, and what's the meaning behind Better Off Alone?
Yeah, absolutely. So Better Off Alone follows Time to Move On in the album, and it was actually the first single that I released ever. So I released a couple of singles and then I released the album. And Better Off Alone was the very first one that I released. So that one was a lot of fun to create. Um, it was actually the last song that I wrote. It almost didn't make the album. I had a different song slotted in, and then I wrote that one, and I thought, actually, this is really cool. And literally, I was scrolling Facebook one day, and someone had posted a picture, and the picture said, "I've been about you since I met you," and it was like them with their significant other. And I went, that's a really cool idea. What can I do with it? And so the same thing, I fleshed out this whole song and I flipped it. So in this Facebook post, it was a really happy sentiment, but I flipped it to be a little bit of a negative sentiment. You know, I was all about you, but it was all about you. That was the issue. Been about you since I met you. I was wondering how I could forget you. And this person that I was trying to break up with, you know, wouldn't let me break up with them. So that's why, you know, begging on my knees, let me free kind of thing. And realizing, oh, I would be way better off alone than I would be with you. Be better on my own, better off alone. I think the most fun thing about that song, my favorite part of that song, is in the verse sections. You've got these vocal lines that come in, the backing vocal lines, they're dum 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 dum. And they're my favorite part. So Jacob Collier is a massive influence for me. And he does a lot of cascading vocal lines. And so I thought, how can I incorporate that idea somehow and use him as an influence in my music? And that Better Off Alone is how I did it. And so it's a very, very unique song on the album. It's probably one of the only real lo-fi kind of electronic songs. But yeah, definitely one of my favorites because of that Jacob Collier vocal line is my favorite part of that song, and maybe the whole album. Maybe. There's a lot of parts.
For my very next question, so take your blame away. Like that's the next one I'm going to mention. Like, what was it like creating this one, and what is the meaning behind Take Your Blame Away?
Yeah, absolutely. Take Your Blame Away is one of the darker ones. And it describes a time in this relationship where my partner cheated on me basically. And the very opening line of the verse in that song is, you wanted her and you wanted me and you wanted everything that I could be. And the whole idea around that is, you know, he cheated on me, but he still wanted to take every morsel of my soul. That's the idea. And that one was really monumental. It's one of the only songs in which I repeat the verse. And the song is almost a copy and paste for verse one to the end, really. And it's really about just that idea of you're just ruminating, and you just can't stop thinking about the fact that this happened. And kind of realizing, hold on, it's not my fault that any of this happened, even though you told me it was my fault, but it's not my fault. So it's really about the reclamation of power, of that power balance that kind of went askew in that. And the way that I wrote that one, I actually heard it in a dream. I woke up one morning with a start. So something that some people know about me is my dreams are really vivid, and I remember them in great detail. And I'll remember sounds, sights, smells, feelings, everything. And I remember waking up one morning from this dream that I'd had, and I could hear the song still. And so I rushed, I think I've never gotten out of bed quicker, rushed over into my studio, and I just laid down what I could hear. And that was the chorus line, but more specifically, underneath, a bit buried in the mix, there's It's kind of a piano. It's kind of like boom boom. There's a dun 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 dun, and that's what I could hear in the dream. And I could hear their "Take away your blame." I could hear that in the dream as well. And so I wrote that song, and then I took it to a friend of mine who's a producer, who was he was initially going to just do a mix and master, and he did some really cool things on some other tracks. Hazel Eyes, there's that vocal line and it's all chopped up. It's actually, what I'd done there is I'd sampled some things from Viridian Sunset and used them in Hazel Eyes. And what he'd done is he chopped up the sample in Hazel Eyes using a tremolo effect. And I went, that's really cool. And this is a concept album in story and in motifs as well. So I said, Take Away Your Blame comes right after Viridian Sunset. I love what you've done with that tremolo effect. Let's see if we can layer it into Take Away Your Blame. So that's why you hear that at the start. So we transposed it, I think, up a step or down up a step, I think, and moved it into Take Away Your Blame, so that if you listen through the album chronologically, it'll flow through. And that melodic movement can actually be found in a lot of the songs if you're listening closely enough. And sometimes I've made them shorter. So in Would I Do It Again, you can hear it in places, and I've just made it really short and really buried it back in the mix and put it within these other backing vocal lines that you wouldn't expect. And you chopped it in half, moved it around. So that descending melodic line can be found all throughout the album if you listen closely enough.
That's so cool. I love that. So on to my very next question. So what made you decide as a person and like especially as an artist to get into the whole music in the first place?
Yeah. To be honest, music is all I've ever known, to be honest. Thanks, Miko. Nice one. Music is everything I've known. As I said before, I've been singing. Some of my earliest memories were just me walking around the house as a kid singing. So I've never known life without music. So it just kind of made sense that this is where I go with it. I studied music all throughout school, all throughout high school, into university, and I taught music as well. And it's just, I don't think I could imagine my life without it. So I don't think there was anything that pushed me into the music industry. I think it's just where I've always been. So I wouldn't know where else to go, even if I wanted to go somewhere else.
So on to the next question. So on to that, like what does performing like music mean to you, like especially as an artist?
Performing's really special. In the studio, you're able to go back and retake and think about things for a long period of time. Whereas performing, you're in the moment, and that decision is the final decision, and that's what happens. So I'm a cover musician around Brisbane, and I'm in various duos and bands with some friends, and it's all about in the moment decisions, and it's all about being in the moment and having fun with friends. It sounds very cheesy, but that's a lot of what performing is, and just feeling a connection with people. I played a gig on Friday, and it was the best gig I'd ever played, purely because the audience was right there with me. And I could just feel that connection, and we were bouncing off each other. And it's the same things, you go to open mics and you bounce off the other musicians that are there with you, and improvising on the spot. And that performance and that improvisation can then lead to a composition, or taking it back to the studio then and be like, that was really cool what we did there. What can we do to lay that down into a sound that we can share with lots more people that weren't at the venue at the time. So I think performing is a sharing of experiences and a sharing of ideas and feeling. But I think it's also a bit of a trampoline place for ideas and collaboration when you are with other musicians. It's really you can just jump off from that point and see what happens and see where you go and have fun doing it.
So So on to your next question. So if you could go anywhere in the world, like on tour, or any place for your music, like what part of the world would you like to go on, like to, and why?
I'm not really sure about this one. This is a tough one. Um, I think I would love to go to Europe. I'm not going to lie. I am Irish, and so I think I would love to tour in Ireland. Not particularly, I'm not sure if they would like my music over there, but more just because I want to see where I'm from. I've never been there. And to be able to share, experiences with people who, are from where I used to be from. I think that would be really awesome. Um, and, Europe's just a really cool place. I think I would have to say Europe. I feel a bit of a connection there. Um, I mean, America would be cool too, but yeah, Europe's the place where I'd want to go.
So on to your next question. So if you could work with any top three music artists in the music industry, who would you want to work with and why?
Yeah. So I think definitely Jacob Collier, who I mentioned before. He's a massive influence for me. Anyone who knows me knows that I love spicy harmonies. If you if you've looked at my page as well, you know that I love spicy harmonies, and I love to build them. And so does he, funnily enough. So I think I'd love to work with Jacob Collier because his knowledge of harmonic progression and how he and his ideas are so creative. I think I'd love to learn from him. And I think two other musicians are Australians. One of them is Holy Holy. They're an Australian band, and they're just phenomenal. They really know how to write a good song, and songs that are full of emotion, while also get your foot tapping. Like I saw them live one time, and the wall of sound or the surround of sound that I can't even explain the feeling, but it reached deep into your soul and it pulled your heart out and then it put it back in, and wow, it was just one experience. And they are just two very phenomenal musicians. And another musician that performed with them at that time, who I already really liked, is Tia Costello. She's a phenomenal musician as well. She's got really great music, and she just seems like a real down to earth person. And just again, she knows how to craft a good song and a really original songs, in the way that they're written, and her lyricism and the way that she can describe things, is really inspirational. Jacob, yeah. Miko, Jacob, what a man.
Yes. So on to your next question. So, like, if you could give any advice to your younger self, like looking back over your time in the music industry, like, what advice would you give to your younger self and why?
If I could give advice to my younger self, I would say, don't be afraid. I was terrified. My first open mic, I was so scared. And I used to be a piano player. Well, I still am a piano player. But recently I started playing guitar, and I remember feeling like vomiting on stage the first time I ever played guitar live. So I was always so nervous just to share my opinions and to share how I feel and to perform in front of people. And I would probably, the advice I'd give to my younger self would be to get out there sooner. I was always a writer, and I felt most comfortable in the studio, so that's where I stayed for a very long time. And I don't regret the way I've done it. I have made such great connections, and lots of great friends the way I've done it. But I think if I'd gotten out sooner, I'd be more confident, and I'd be further ahead maybe than where I am now. And yeah, it's always good to have the industry connections as well. So get out, play some open mics is what I would tell my younger self.
Yes. Well, on to your next question, on to that. Like, what is your favorite cover song to perform of all time and why?
Of all time. Well, my favorite cover songs kind of change with the seasons a little bit. um, Currently, my favorite cover song is by a band called Sparkadia. Um, yeah, it's called Talking Like I'm Falling Downstairs. And it's really interesting because it's largely an electronic piece of music. Um, but I cover it on guitar. And if I can, I'll get a bassist and a drummer up with me. And it's such a, it allows for a lot of dynamics in the song. I mean, because it's the way that the song is structured is very similar between verse and chorus kind of idea. And so you really have to work to add dynamics in there, um, and really put in a lot of expression into the way that you're playing. But there's also just a multitude of ways that you can play it if you want to. And also, it's just a banger. I just love it. It's such a good song. So, yeah, if you don't know it, Talking Like I'm Falling Downstairs. Absolute banger.
That's awesome. So on to your next question. So if like what advice would you give to up and coming artists that want to get into like the music industry and yeah, what advice would you give them?
Yeah, I mean, I myself I myself am an emergent artist. Try to say that quickly 5 times. Um, but someone that is up and coming, I would say the same thing, the same advice that I would give to my younger self. Get out and play open mics. Um, it's not only a place to meet people, not only a place to practice performing, but it's also a place to learn. And I've probably learned more at my open mics than I did in my university degree, just because you're able to watch people who are just a bit better than you and say, what are they doing? And the fact that everyone is so nice at those open mics, you can even go up to them and be like, I loved what you did. How did you do it? And they'll tell you, and they'll teach you exactly how to do it. And they'll say, hey, let's have a jam next week, and I'll show you exactly how to do it. And so the amount of things that I've learned just by going to open mics and talking to people and trying to figure out how they do what they do, I think it's invaluable, invaluable. And you get a lot of chances to collaborate with people as well, and put acts together and put songs together and record and produce with different people all the time. So it's a very collaborative space.
So on to our next question. So like what are the positive and negatives into the whole music industry and how do you get through those like negative moments as an artist?
Yeah. Um, Look, positives is that you're able to find your space and you can create, especially if you're a full-time creative, you can create on your own schedule. And you really get to express yourself and have people come up to you and say, hey, that song really resonated with me and it actually helped me figure this out. And I think if you can help one person figure something out through your music, then you've made a difference. And that's a massive positive. Um, there are not many negatives. Probably the only negative would be the way that this could be a bit controversial. The way that things are going as far as streaming is concerned is a massive negative, because it's beginning to mean that artists aren't being paid necessarily for their work, or they're being paid very little. Um, so that makes it difficult, and that's a negative because you'll get 30,000 streams, and you'll check your revenue and it'll be $80, and you go, oh God, like so much time and effort went into that, and that's all that the services are willing to pay me for it. Whereas Spotify's raking in the big bucks. Whereas back in the day, you might sell a CD and you get $10 per sale, and it just makes it a little bit more accessible. But at the same time, streaming services also makes music accessible to a bigger audience. So it's really a double-edged sword on that one. I can't really think of any other negatives. Yeah, when you're writing new music, the difference between skill and taste, is really hard to overcome, but not necessarily a negative. That's a learning opportunity, if anything, which will develop into a positive. So there are short-term negatives, sure, but I think there are more long-term positives, in my opinion.
So on to our next question. So like what's your favorite place to gig at, like in Brisbane locally?
Oh, in Brisbane locally, I'll tell you what, it's not a paid gig. So I do a lot of paid gigs. The one I played on Friday was at a place called Four Pines, Four Pines Bar in the city, and that was a lot of fun to play there. Um, yeah, there's a lot of great places around Brisbane as well. There's Archive in West End, um, and gosh, I'm blanking now on all the others. Um, ah, no, I've lost them all. But but there's also, all the open mics that happen as well in various places. So, there's the Nonus Chermside open mic and the Tiger Eye open mic on a Monday, all run by the wonderful Dan Munn, which any artist looking to get up to have a play, definitely the place to go. Yeah, those are great places to play. But yeah, a lot of fun at Four Pines and Archive. And if I think of the other one that I'm trying to remember right now, I'll let you know.
That's my very last question, Jordie. So, like, what's next for you, like, for the rest of 2022 and for next year, if, like, you have any upcoming news that you'd like to share on the show?
Yeah. For the rest of 22, I am writing and putting together different projects with some friends. I've got a band project and a duo project in the works. And for the end of 22 and the start of 2023, I think we'll just be in the studio doing a lot of recording. I've written some music recently, which is a bit of a left turn from what I've released in the past. So everything I've released in the past is very digital, and it's a lot more slow and chill. But I've started writing some music that will be acoustic based, so it'll be a band format with some elements of digital as well, and it'll be a lot more upbeat. So get ready for that swift left turn. Which I think it'll be a lot of fun. I just write whatever I feel like, and I feel like writing some upbeat music now, so that's what I'm going to do.
I actually love how you're in Brisbane, Jordie, because I'm actually from Brisbane, Logan. So I have to check out one of the gigs sometime. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I post them all on my Instagram, so if there's ever one near you, feel free to come along. It'd be great to have you there.
I definitely will.
What is my Fender? It's pretty close in tune. I will angle this down a little. I might play Better Off Alone. I might as well do that. And let's think. Can you hear that?
Yeah.
I've just blanked on what the chords are. That's the right chords. Alright, let's do it. 'Cause I've been about you since I met you. Got me wondering how I could forget you. Got me begging on my knees. Begging, baby, let me free. Got me overanalyzing all of your. And I'm sick and tired of it. I'd be better on my own. I'd be better off alone. I censored it a little bit. That's the brightest idea I've ever had in mind. Thought that I would be your one. No. Moving on, I think that I finally understand. Darling, I can hold your hand no more. Yeah, I wish you the best. But I never want to see you again. Now I'm gonna reconnect with all of my friends. All the ones that you made me forget. 'Cause I've been about you since I met you. Got me wondering how I could forget you. Got me begging on my knees. Begging, baby, let me free. Got me overanalyzing you, I'll admit. And I'm sick and tired of it. I'd be better on my own. I'd be better off alone. Cause I've been about you since I met you. Got me wondering how I could forget you. Got me begging on my knees. Begging, baby, let me free. Got me overanalyzing, you all admit, and I'm really on sick and tired of it. I'll be better on my own. I'll be better off alone, yeah. Got me begging on my knees, begging baby let me free. Got me overanalyzing, you all admit, and I'm really on sick and tired of it. I'll be better on my own. I'll be better off alone. I'll be better on my own. I'll be better off alone.
Yes, Geordie. Wow. Oh my God, that was amazing. Do you have
Thank you.
No, you're very welcome. I just want to say thank you so much again for appearing on my show. It has been such an incredible pleasure having you on. Do you have like any
Thanks
last
for having me.
Do you have any last like final thoughts you'd like to share to people on the show?
Oh, final thoughts. Well, if you're a musician, keep at it. If you want to hear good live music, let me know. Come to one of my gigs, or let me know and I will send you to one of my friends' gigs, because they are also really awesome musicians. And yeah, a massive thanks to everyone that helped me get here. My producer, I think Pete's here. My producer who's helped me produce the album. And you know, everyone who was an inspiration to the album or gave support on it, and all my friends that have supported me along the way. And a massive thanks to a man called Dan Munn. He wasn't around for the creation of the album, but he runs the open mics around Brisbane and does amazing work for musicians around Brisbane as well. So yeah, just big thank yous to everyone who supports live music around Brisbane. That's probably my last thoughts.